Welcome to The Kingstonian, a program that profiles individuals who are passionate about what they do for a living, about what organization they belong to, or simply passionate about the community they are a part of. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the program. My name is Dave Cunningham, and our special guest today is the Principal and Vice-Chancellor of Queen's University, Daniel Woolf. Welcome.
Welcome. Thanks very much for having me, Dave.
Now, from what I have read, if we're talking a little bit about you and what brought you to Queen's, you were a member of the class of Arts 80.
That is correct.
And then you went away.
Yep.
Got more education, got a PhD from Oxford.
Or a DPhil, we actually say there.
Okay.
Same idea.
And then you started teaching, and then you ended up back at Queen's as the principal.
That's right.
Only the third alumnus to be appointed principal of Queen's in the 175 years.
You know your history.
What kind of impact did that have on you when you got the phone call to say you got the job?
To say I was speechless is perhaps an understatement. I thought that the interview process had gone relatively well, but obviously there's other horses in the race. And I guess it was got the call pretty soon after the last round of interviews had concluded. Within actually 2 or 3 hours, I was still on a bit of a high from that. But I think it took me several days to get back down from cloud 9 to earth. There was also a certain amount of, oh my Lord, what do I do? What do I do now? Like the end of the old Robert Redford movie, The Candidate. But as I realized what I'd sort of signed up for, but no, it was a point of just great a sense of great responsibility and challenge, but also of just a great opportunity to come back to an institution to which I basically owe my entire career and be able to be of some service to it.
Now, you are a history professor by training, by education. At some particular point before you got to Queen's, you started doing administration as opposed to the academic side. What made you move into that arena?
Well, it's funny. I mean, nobody who becomes an academic thinks that they're going to end up being, a dean or a provost or a principal or president anywhere. That's simply not on the planning career track. But I think some of us just kind of stumble into it by accident. I started doing a number of, department level jobs at Dalhousie, which is where I was through the late 80s and most of the 90s. And I guess did them at a sufficiently competent level that I got asked to put my name in for an associate dean position in the graduate school at Dal. And that then, by that point, I'd been at Dalhousie for about 12 years, and I thought, it might be a good time to think about moving on. I guess I've never been one for sort of staying in one place the entire time. So I, put my name in for a job at McMaster and went there for 3 years as Dean of Humanities, and then from there on to the University of Alberta, a much bigger school, for 7 years as Dean of a much bigger Faculty of Arts, and then back here in 2009.
Now, give me a sense as to what a principal of the university would do. Like, what do you spend most of your time on?
Well, it's actually changed quite a lot, and I get asked that a lot, and I think it's quite a different job than it, say, would have been for Principal Watts, the late Principal Watts, who was principal when I was here, or his successor, Principal Smith, who was here when I was a postdoctoral fellow, my second stint here. The job of principals, or presidents, as they're called at most other places, has become a lot more externally focused. So some of the things that would have, I think, fallen to me in previous years now fall to the chief academic and budget and operating officer, if you like, our provost, and that's a position I introduced when I arrived because we were simply too big. There are too many external obligations on fundraising and government relations, internationalization, for me to be in 2 or 3 places at once. It's always been a bit of a challenge to balance that with keeping your foot on the ground here and not being an absentee principal. So I would say my time is, and it's a little uneven. I mean, the fall term is just one long pinball pool of travel and meetings and so forth and off-campus trips. Winter term is a little bit more at home, so I spent much of the fall, for example, doing 4 international and 1 trans-Canada trip. I have much less of that this term when I actually also happen to be teaching a course.
And that was something I was going to get into, so you still have the ability to teach.
I do. Well, I'm not sure I have the ability, but I do have the inclination to do it from time to time. And I like to keep my hand in, and it's very easy to sort of get a little bit disconnected from the business of the business, which is teaching students and doing research. So I've tried to keep my research career up also on a lowish voltage for now. Maybe an article or 2 a year, a few book reviews, and maybe a conference. I've also taught in the history first year course almost every year I've been here. In the years I didn't, I've taught my own course. So I'm teaching one right now, a sort of combined 4th year and master's level seminar, pretty close to my research specialization.
We talked a little bit before we started recording the interview, and we focused a little bit on your involvement with the station. And you weren't involved with CFRC when you were a student. But as principal, you are involved. As a matter of fact, in less than 3 hours, you're going to be back doing your own show, which is called Dark Glasses.
That's right.
Now, give us a sense as to what kind of show that is. And obviously, it's a music program. What kind of music does it involve?
Well, Dark Glasses is a little bit eclectic, and I think it started from a sense of having missed out on one aspect of my undergraduate education and maybe not participated in quite as many extracurricular activities as I would have liked. And one in particular that I'd wanted to do was radio, and I just never quite got around to it. So when the opportunity, I did a couple of guest appearances on other people's shows the first couple of years I was here, and then sort of, we hit on the idea of doing my own show. I've been doing it now for about 5 years. Unlike you, I'm not a fully trained CFRC volunteer, so they send other people in with me to produce it so that I don't blow something up by pressing the wrong button. But it's my musical taste is pretty eclectic. In the last 20 years, it's veered very much towards jazz, but I also keep interest in sort of retro stuff, particularly stuff from the 70s when I was a teenager and a young man, and also some of the more sort of indie acts that have emerged in recent years, including a lot of Canadian content, so I always have some Canadian content in there as well.
Okay, let's talk about Queen's, the university.
Sure.
If you are a citizen of this city, and I imagine this applies to a lot of cities across the country, there are institutions or places of note in your communities that you have never visited, never spent much time learning much about. And I think for a lot of people in town, they know Queen's is here, but they don't know a lot about Queen's and the impact that Queen's has. So why don't we start? We know that it's 175 years old. Tell us a little bit about number of students, number of faculty and staff.
Well, first of all, Dave, I think you made an excellent point that it is obviously well known that Queen's is here. But I think there is sometimes a certain reluctance among our fellow Kingstonians to set foot on campus, even though we are actually a very open campus. There's no wall or perimeter. There's a big sign at the corner of Union and University, but apart from that, anybody can drive or walk through. That said, the university can seem a little bit forbidding at times. So we've grown a lot. We're one of the oldest in the country. When I was here as a student in the late 70s, we were around 10,000 students all in. Now it's around 21,000, including graduate students. Some students who actually aren't physically here, for example, are some of our executive MBA programs are non-residential. My wife just graduated from a program, a Master of Science in Health Quality, a year or so ago, which was taught entirely online, although the students came here for a couple of 3-week sessions. But generally speaking, between particularly September and April, we've got probably around 21,000 students here. So that's like putting a small city in the middle of a slightly bigger city.
And you have faculty and staff
Faculty and staff, faculty number around 800, 850. Sort of depends how you count them. We have a number of adjuncts, many of whom work part-time. We have some of our medical faculty who have full-time clinical practices apart from teaching and in many cases doing research as well. So it's a little hard to give the exact count, but it's about that. It's about that size. So we're mid-sized by Canadian standards, which in some ways is a sort of awkward size to be because we're not a very, very small place. Bishops, where I taught for a year once, or one of the maritime schools like Matt Allison, which can foster, I think, a very, very intimate environment. But neither are we an enormous urban university such as the University of Alberta, where my last job was. So it's always a bit of a balance for us. And because we're very residential and our students mainly come from outside the Kingston area, it means when they're here, they are here week in, week out. Some obviously do go home to the GTA and elsewhere for the weekend, but by and large, when our students arrive in September, they're here for the year 24 hours a day. Mm-hmm. So there's this buzz of activity, sometimes maybe a little too much activity, but that makes it quite different from many other universities I've worked at.
Now, given the number of people that are here, the impact on the city is fairly substantial.
It is
from an economic perspective.
Yeah, it is. It's I think the positive benefit, of course, is our students are here and they're buying groceries, buying other consumer goods, they're paying rent, and I know from talking to our cab drivers that they're our students' biggest fans, I think, because they have a bit more of a rough go of it during the summer months. That said, any time you increase the population of a relatively small and confined city and increase it basically by a quarter to a third once a year, there are naturally going to be some pressures, and as we have grown, we have, of course, seen some pressure on the local neighborhoods. We and the AMS and the other student groups try to work very, very closely with the city and with the police to minimize tensions. Yep. But in any residential university town, going back to when universities first started in the 13th century, there's always going to be some tension.
Oh, yeah. Now, this program doesn't normally generate breaking news, but while we're talking about the economics and the city, the university is about to get into an arrangement with the city to try to keep some of these highly trained people that you educate here in the city. Can you tell us a little bit about what this memorandum of understanding is all about?
Sure. Well, we went public with that just last Thursday, and it's not official yet because it's going up to City Council just tomorrow, Tuesday. I'll be speaking there. I think it speaks very well for the vision of our particular mayor and this council, which I think have really, really raised the bar in terms of discussions of making Kingston a little less of a this is a bit of exaggeration, a little bit less of a sort of entirely public sector, great place to retire, great place to sail your boat, and much more of an economic driver. I don't think realistically we're ever going to be a Waterloo type place simply because we do not have the population density in this part of Kingston. But there's so much more we could be doing. It's a fantastic place to live. We have a medical school. We have several hospitals. We have this supply of very, very smart people, not just at Queen's, but at RMC, at St. Lawrence College. So I think there's all sorts of opportunity. All this MOU does really is just states a very, very clear formal arrangement between the city and us to do things such as, potentially develop the lands out at Innovation Park north of Princess a little more, and to try and develop a bit more of a robust ecosystem such that some of our students will not feel that they have to leave immediately after graduation to seek work back in Toronto or Ottawa or going back out west, but will feel that there are opportunities to either join a larger business if we can attract some more of them here, or indeed start our own business. And I might mention on that front, one of the things we're most excited about is the role Queen's has taken in the last few years in terms of entrepreneurship and innovation. And we recently opened the Dun & Deshpande Innovation Center. And when our construction at the former Physical Education Center on the corner of Union and Division is finished in about 16 months' time, we think, that should be the home for that, as well as a new wellness center. So there's all sorts of, I think, really exciting things to happen. The MOU doesn't make anything happen of its own, but it's a tremendous step forward in terms of a formal partnership between town and gown.
Sounds good. There is a video that's online that features you talking about the position. And one of the remarks you made revolved around your background, being a historian. And I'm not quoting you exactly, but basically you talked about celebrating the past, learning from the past, but not living in the past. One of the things that I guess I would phrase it from the perspective of if you're standing still, you're falling behind.
Absolutely.
So if you're talking about an institution like Queen's that has a lot of great people in it, you have to continually look to find other people as well as increase the number of facilities or buildings that you have on campus. And the fundraising, I'm just amazed about how much money that initiative campaign raised.
Well, the initiative campaign was a tremendous success, and I give enormous credit to our team in advancement led by Vice Principal Tom Harris, former Dean of Engineering, to our deans, to our many, many volunteers, and of course to our donors. Queen's has a very long tradition, one of the strongest in Canada in terms of philanthropy from alumni, of course, but one of the big surprises was the degree to which we got support from people who hadn't previously had a connection with Queen's, other than maybe they sent their kid here, but who simply wanted to invest in the success of a great Canadian institution. So I was pretty confident we were going to hit our $500 million goal, even in the wake of the 2008 crash. I certainly didn't expect us to vault over it to the height we actually did. But it's absolutely essential, as you're right, because an institution that does stand still does exactly your point, fall behind, and research needs change, and we have to update facilities for those. And indeed, we, I think, have got some new facilities there. For example, our new medical school building that opened about 5 years ago was really the very first designated building for medical teaching in the university's history, believe it or not. And it's completely changed or enabled a lot of pedagogical changes. So teaching needs change as well. We've put a fair bit of resources, not necessarily into new buildings, but into refurbishing and redesigning and changing the quality of space for some of the old ones, so that there are, for instance, many more interactive classrooms, because the era, there is obviously lots of space for the old lecture, sage on the stage, but many professors and students prefer something a little bit more interactive.
I wish we had more time. Maybe we'll have to get you back in to talk about some more aspects of it. Thank you very much for your time today. I've enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks a lot, Dave. Till we meet again.
This show is produced in collaboration with CFRC at Queen's University, Kingston, Ontario, with infrastructure support from Queen's Faculty of Engineering and Applied Science. CFRC is located on traditional Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee territory. Find more great podcasts at podcasts.cfrc.ca.